We are still waiting on one panelist, but I do think I'll at least start the introduction aspect of this. Good morning. Welcome, everyone. Thanks for joining us for our Zoom social for Wildlife Connections, conversations with wildlife professionals. My name is Grace Campbell. I'm an associate wildlife biologist. I'm going to be moderating our gathering today. For those who haven't joined us before, we want this to be a casual online gathering. To get to know each other, share work experiences, happenings from the field. We offer these socials every other month. And we've had a lot of different speakers. Our last speaker was Jonathan Mays with the FWC back in June, and he talked about his invertebrate work. Super interesting. We've had people speak on land management with federal, state, tribal, local entities, water management districts, certain wildlife species specific topics, and even wildlife focused travel. So it's all on the table, what we can discuss, and we're always looking for other interesting or informative topics. So if you have any projects, stories, even field mishaps, anything you want to share, we're happy to share that. We'd love to hear from you. So with that, I'm going to introduce today's topic. We're going to be talking about the Wildlife Society certification program. So I'm going to drop a link into oh, that's not it. I'm going to drop a link for this into the chat, just so you can see, copy. Yeah, cool. So feel free to peruse. So we're going to keep it pretty informal in this conversation as we just, discuss the certification program with the help of our panelist. I'll be going over what the certification is, what it's used for, how it works, and then get into our panelists. And their backgrounds, we're going to have questions for them, and then we're also going to open up the questions to our audience. We're really excited for the engagement that we're going to be getting from this. At the end of the call, you can either come off mute and ask your questions, or you can just drop them in the chat and we'll make sure that they're answered. So this is the official wildlife biologist certification program through the Wildlife Society, and it's the only peer-reviewed wildlife certification program. The applications are given to the Wildlife Society Certification Review Board, and they're approved by experts, voted onto the board by TWS members, and each individual represents the different TWS sections at the national level. A certification represents a high quality wildlife biologist. They're well-rounded educationally, and they have proven expertise in the field of wildlife management and conservation. Becoming a certified wildlife biologist is a globally recognized mark of professional credibility that reflects an individual's knowledge, experience, and accomplishments in the field of wildlife conservation. It enhances the public's confidence in the wildlife profession as a whole. It demonstrates a commitment to maintaining high professional standards, and it signifies that the individual is qualified in their field. It can also provide a competitive advantage when pursuing employment, promotion, or other career opportunities. So to qualify so we start with the associate wildlife biologist. That's kind of the first certification that can be granted. You have to have a sufficient level of education in the realm of wildlife. So having received at least a bachelor's degree. The experience can be replaced or can be used to substitute for certain credits that you could potentially be lacking in certain areas. Like I've heard there are concerns with botany classes. Sometimes there's a struggle having enough botany credits. So experience could be used in lieu of that. And then the next level is a certified wildlife biologist, a CWB. So individuals to be granted that, you have to demonstrate at least 5 years of experience in conservation and wildlife management, on top of that educational background required for the AWB. The CWB is also renewed every 5 years to maintain the status. So that uses CEUs, continuing education units, so you can go to conferences and attend talks, and that can be counted as credits for that renewal. There is also a qualified airport wildlife biologist certification. So it meets the similar standards to the certified wildlife biologist, but it requires additional training, courses specific to wildlife hazard management at airports. The difference essentially between an AWB, you have to, have the certain education requirements. And then once you've had at least 5 years relevant in the field, then you become a CWB. And then the QAWB is specifically for mitigating wildlife at airports across the country. So with that, now that we have some background, I'd love to open this up to the panelists. So we can start with just a few questions. What is your designation, AWB, CWB, QAWB? What is your, general background in the wildlife profession so far, and what is your current position? Rob, would you like to start us off?
Sure thing. So I'm Rob Meyer. I'm with the Tall Timbers Research Station, and I'm a certified wildlife biologist as of a couple of years ago. Um, my background in wildlife is, well, my first job was with Angie Larsen in Mississippi doing cotton rats, telemetry. Moved to bobwhite quail, then moved to Mississippi again to work on red-cockaded woodpeckers, and that's the species I've been working with for the past 10 years now. And I help manage and do research on red-cockaded woodpeckers professionally. So pretty cool stuff, I think. But yeah, open up to the next person. Yeah.
Who would like to go next?
I'll jump in there. Um, Good morning, everyone. Chad Allison. I'm with currently with Polk County Parks and Natural Resources. I'm the land and water manager for the program. Um, I've been fortunate to work as a wildlife biologist for the majority of my career, about 25 years, and I've been CWB since 2012. In Florida, I've been working about 20 years, and it's varied from what was once known as a nuisance wildlife biologist with FWC, now known as a wildlife assistance biologist, and that really focused on human wildlife conflict. And then I got into the public lands program with the WMA system and serving as a project leader, and then moving up to district biologist over multiple WMAs. I've spent time with the South Florida Water Management District as a land manager, a bit of time with the Regional Planning Council working on easements around Avon Park Air Force Range, some private lands work with U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, the Partners for Fish and Wildlife Program, and currently here with Polk County supervising the land and water program. Most of those things have been really focused on land management with some kind of human element, but it's all had some sort of connection with wildlife and sort of habitat management. So I've been really fortunate in that regard.
Wonderful, thank you.
I can jump in, Grace. Morning, everyone. My name is Steve Shea. I've been a professional wildlife biologist for 40 years. I got my certification in '92, so I've been certified biologist for 34 years. I'm president of Shea Wildlife. It's a private wildlife consulting firm based out of Northwest Florida. We manage over 500,000 acres in Florida, and I also serve as the stewardship coordinator for the National Deer Association, and we're working in 25 different states now, providing habitat management work on our national forests. I also do a bunch of non-game and endangered species work. I manage a couple gopher tortoise recipient sites. And in the past, I've held leadership positions, senior leadership positions with the FWC, the Department of Defense, and the St. Joe Company. But 13 years, 17 years working in the government and 23 years working in the private sector. Thanks, Grace.
Wonderful, thanks, Steve.
Hi, everyone. I'm Angie Larsen-Gray. I am an Eastern Forest Wildlife Ecologist with NCASI. We're a nonprofit research organization that works with the forest product sector. I'm CWB. I actually started as an AWB probably about 10 years ago now, and transferred into that CWB as soon as I could. And I am very fortunate that, as Rob mentioned, I started with rodents in my grad work and now do everything forest biodiversity. So get to work with birds, bats, pollinators, herps, anything and everything basically that can be in forests is on the table, and it's all throughout the Eastern US. So we work with our members to help them with their environmental sustainability goals, which biodiversity is a big one, of course. And so currently have lots of projects that we manage and work on with collaborators that are at academic positions, but all the way through state and federal government agencies as well. Thank you.
Thanks, Angie.
I guess that leaves me. So my name is Hunter Slade. I'm the senior wildlife biologist for Lakes Ranch. I've been a certified wildlife biologist since 2020. Before that, was an associate wildlife biologist for a year, and then hit my 5 years and was able to upgrade to CWV. I've been with the Lakes for 12 years now. I've spent pretty much my entire career here. I'm in charge of the wildlife resources on the ranch, whether it be game species like deer and turkeys on our hunting leases, or threatened and endangered species such as tortoises. I run a couple of recipient sites, or all the recipient sites on the ranch. And then recently I've kind of been involved with some of the Panther Bank stuff. So, but I think that's pretty much it.
Thanks, Hunter. So, I do have a few questions I'd love to ask each of you just to kind of, get some more background, just on your experiences. So, first, I'd love to hear from each of you. How do you feel that having, your certification, it could either be the AWB or the CWB, has benefited your career? It can, be as, it could just be a quick thing, like, you've used it. Like Steve, I actually thought of you for this. I know that you've spoken at FWC commission meetings and you've led with I'm Steve Shea. I'm a certified wildlife biologist. So, examples like that could be that. It could be acquiring certain permits. Just speak to, how you feel that it's benefited your career.
You want me to start, Grace?
Sure.
It's interesting, when you come out of college, I had aspirations of getting my certification. And so that pushed me to it. But when you work, most biologists work for government, the majority do, not all. But when you work for government, it's almost like the certification doesn't have a lot of benefits because the credibility is backed by the agency. You work for the agency. Where I really found the benefits is when I started working in the private sector. In the private sector, it really doesn't matter. You don't have that backing. So the backing is your certification. And there's countless contracts that I have that require a certification for you to be eligible. A lot of the FWC permits, the private landowners who primarily I work with, they need a biologist that comes in that has certification in order to be eligible to submit for certain permits. So from that perspective in my business, I mean, I rely heavily on the certification because it allows me to work in arenas that otherwise I wouldn't be able to because it's required by a permit request. Like even the Fish and Wildlife Service just put out recently, they required a certified biologist oversee the project. So unless you were one, you couldn't compete for that work. So it's highly instrumental when you work in the private sector, at least in the arenas that I work in.
Yeah, wonderful perspective. Thank you. Hunter, I'd love to open it up to you since you are also in the private, so I feel like there could be a potential, tie-in with that.
Yeah, I was actually going to completely second what Steve said. So for the ranch that I work on, we have private lands alligator management program permits and private lands deer management program permits. Both those do require a certified wildlife biologist to approve them. And so with me having the certification, I'm able to actually approve the permits for the ranch rather than having to go outside to get someone to approve it. So it's a major benefit for us.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you. I'll just
Yeah, I can go next. Yeah.
Nice.
As a fellow private sector biologist, it does help. I work with the like more lead people, like land managers that manage their own land, stuff like that. And a CWB might mean something to some of them, but more so it helps with the other activism stuff that I do as well. So when I send a letter to a congressperson, I'm not just Joe Smith. I'm Robert Meyer, a certified wildlife biologist, and this is my input on this matter. So I feel like it helps lend a little bit more credibility, hopefully stand out some of the opinions that you have when you're speaking to representatives and stuff like that. So I think that's one, unique part. Otherwise, I think, I was this AWB for a few years, and then became CWB. And it's just like a nice tag at the end of your your email. But otherwise, I think it really helps to focus, and it's not in the three letters that matters. It's the pursuit of the knowledge to get those three letters that should help you become a better, more well-rounded biologist, and that should be your goal too. So I think it's nice to just have an official stamp of like, yep, like you're nailing it, you're doing all the right things, and so the confidence going forward. And I put AWB on my resumes before, but I've been in my position at Tall Timbers now for 8 years. So I haven't had to use the CWB to get a new job yet, but I assume that'll also help going forward. So I'm confident with that too.
Yeah,
Wonderful.
I would add, kind of following Steve's comments about being in the public sector and it not necessarily being as prized, let's say. Um, so I think I was with the Fish and Wildlife Commission when I got mine, and it was supported, but it wasn't emphasized. And then I noticed when I went to the Water Management District, they were a little bit more supportive. I think they were, they had a stipend to pay for, kind of your to re-up it, at the end of 5 years to renew. They covered that. And then when I worked for the Regional Planning Council briefly, working on easements with the Sentinel landscape, they placed a lot of emphasis on it. So I guess I offer that up for anyone who works for one of the state or government agencies who's pursuing it and maybe not getting a full-throated support, but to go ahead and pursue it because there will be value with it outside of those agencies in the future.
Excuse me, Larry, Grace, I'd like to follow up on what he said. And you made a really good point. Lots of times I get asked to speak on a podcast or publicly, and the people that ask you, they immediately say it's a certified wildlife biologist. And so to the public and the public's perception of what you're saying in regards to wildlife, that certification means a lot to the public, and it's touted by those who actually bring you on, or I'm not really saying it, they're saying it. They say, hey, I brought this person's credible, and that's the first thing that they say. And lots of times you don't really think about that, but in the public not knowing, the general public doesn't know a lot about wildlife. They really don't. When they hear that, it's almost like you passed the bar in for to be a lawyer. It's kind of has that distinction among wildlife biologists to the public. We as biologists working together, we say, we're certified, but the public looks at it differently than we do. And that's what comes to the big value comes from that.
Yeah, that's a wonderful perspective, just emphasizing, the value of it beyond our industry, within our field to just like a person who doesn't have as much knowledge about it. Angie, last but not least.
Yeah, I guess I was just going to echo what everyone said. I've had much less direct effect, but I do think, having it on even my email signature, as Rob mentioned, right, provides credibility. And when you're working with so many different partners, you have to know that some people are going to take that in a very different way and other people are just going to ignore it. And so I think that's just kind of been my at least experience, as I think some people do view it as a credibility point and other people will be like, well, okay, that's great. Like, so what, I guess is what I've been hearing from a lot of folks, right? So like, I think there's a different audience for each of the, for that to play out very differently. But I don't think I've ever seen it have a negative effect, which I think is great. And so, whenever it can have a positive, that's excellent and what I'd like to see.
Wonderful, thank you. So thank you all for answering that. That was really interesting, just all the different, unique perspectives, from also just you all have such varied backgrounds. The next few questions I have, I'm just, anyone can answer. If you all want to answer, that's great, but zero pressure. The first one is, how and when did you find out about the TWS certification? And I think if you've been mentioned when you got certified, but I'm curious to hear kind of like how this idea is sprouted in each, in your brain.
I can start with that one because it was really specific. So it was when I was applying for the TWS Leadership Institute, and they used to require that you at least applied for the certification. You didn't necessarily have to have it, but you had to at least have been applying it for it. So I applied for my AWB because I wanted to apply for the Leadership Institute. And then through that, I actually found out more about the certification and, why some people were using it and the ways that they were finding it helpful. And so when I got it as AWB, I did want to continue with my CWB and keep going with that. So there was a very specific reason that I found out and applied, but I was very happy I found out about it.
Grace, I'd like to follow up. Mine was, I had advisor in college and my major professor in grad school that they promoted it. And so they instilled that importance in me. So then I just went on and pursued it. And I think that could be the key to enhancing more wildlifers to actually get their certification is if it's promoted at the university level. Because when you get out, start working, that's the last thing you're really thinking about. You're just trying to get ahead in the profession. But planting that seed while you're in college it was important to me, and I think that could be a stimulus for others to start pursuing it early in their careers.
Yeah, similar to that for me as well, Steve. The student chapter of the Wildlife Society at my undergrad and SUNY ESF in New York, that they impressed upon me that it's pretty important, and also there are course requirements. So start thinking about those early and often. Try to make sure you get those, because after you graduate, it might be a lot more difficult to find time to get those credits for those courses and find those botany credits, as Grace mentioned as well. But I had a great student chapter, so I think that helped encourage me to get that, and it wasn't too bad. They actually had a representative from the board come over and say, like, answer Q&As just like this is, so that we have a lot of questions like, what is it, how much does it cost, what this, that, and the other. And it's nice to have somebody there who was familiar with the process and could quell any of those concerns early on. So that was good.
Yeah, on that, whenever I was in college at the University of Florida, it wasn't talked about a whole lot. It was something that I knew of through a couple of professors, but it wasn't something that was like huge in my mind. After I got out of school and started working here, is when it kind of dawned on me that it was an important certification for me to get, especially for this job. Um, and thankfully, I had kind of taken the classes I needed and was able to get my certification and everything without issue. But I think that there was plenty of people who I went to school with that didn't necessarily take the classes they needed because it was on their mind and would have a more difficult time getting the certification after graduation. So,
Yeah, I would just add that it's really great. I think those are awesome points about emphasizing the need to kind of pursue those classes. But what I started to learn, especially when I put together my application, was that, and I had sort of heard through the grapevine that a lot of the really good flagship programs across the country, the advisors sort of built their curriculum around especially if they were tied to the Wildlife Society. And when I started my major professor never talked about it a whole lot, but when I started kind of looking at my coursework and what I had accomplished, it's like he had almost built it very much in line with the requirements. So I was really thankful for that, how that played out. But I think it was brought to my attention in 2008 when they had the national conference in Miami, and a bunch of people from the Fish and Wildlife Commission went down there to help. And that's when I think I started to ramp up and paying attention to people's CWBs and AWBs.
Wonderful. I'd love to echo a little bit of that. So I am an associate wildlife biologist, and I graduated from UF in 2020, and there were different focus areas that you could select in your, studying wildlife ecology and conservation. And there was a track that would set you up to get your AWB. That was something you could select. And while I didn't select it, I did, just with other students, we got curious about what was the significance of this, and then through the student chapter of the Wildlife Society, we were further educated. And so there were a couple of us that realized that the courses that we had just were already kind of a standard part of what we were taking with this ecology focus. We could get our AWB with that. So I definitely think that's I learned about it in school, and then I Hunter Slade is my boss. For those who don't know, I work at Lex Brothers as well. And when I got here, he really emphasized to me how important that certification was. And so when I got here, I applied for my AWB quite shortly after, with his mentorship with it.
That's a really cool perspective as well of trying to get it. I got it during undergrad, but I like the perspective of those who got it after school and your travels and how difficult was it to get the AWD afterwards? Like the whole, like figuring out the process and everything. Was it relatively simple, or what were your hurdles, Grace?
Yeah, it wasn't so bad. I did work quite closely with a friend that like we were trying at the same time, so we took really similar classes. So we were just kind of comparing. And I was able to, put it together, apply, and I was granted it on my first try, which was nice. Not having to do any back and forth. And I just took, I don't know, my botany classes were, I feel like pretty general. Like I didn't take dendrology or anything. It was I don't even remember what I took, like, local flora of North Florida. It wasn't anything super advanced. So that was nice that it wasn't, I feel like it seemed like the complaints make it sound a little bit more scary, but it wasn't super challenging, in my experience.
Grace, I have a question for you. I just went straight for my certification and didn't go for associate because I didn't see the value in it where I knew I was pursuing the cert. So just wait till I get my 5 years in. What do you feel were the benefits of getting your associate and then waiting till you fulfill the requirements for your certification? Just because I didn't take that route, so I wanted to know what you thought the benefits were of staging it.
I was certainly not expecting to be asked questions on this, so thanks, Steve. I think the two thoughts I have are one, it's like for other people. Like I know that the person who's our marketing director here at Likes Brothers, she likes to tag that on the end of things when whenever I publicly speak, it's like Grace Campbell, AWB. And while it doesn't hold the weight as much as a CWB, it still does kind of hold something for like the general public environmental professionals. It does hold a little bit of credentials. Um, and I think the other thing is Brigham Mason, who is also, I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with him, but he works at Lex Brothers as well. He has a number of times he has referenced that, like, like kind of encouraging me in my growth, that's like a pillar almost. Like I'm a part of these decision-making processes here to help me get my CWB because it's not just getting field experience. If you're working as a tech for 5 years, that's not going to get you to the CWB status. You have to be involved with decision making and implementing things. So he's a couple of times through the years he's referenced them, been like, well, this helps you get your CWB. And I'm like, you're so right for that. And so that just kind of aligned, my priorities again, because I am super close to getting it, which is so exciting. So this panel is honestly perfect timing. A little selfishly, I think I'm up for it next month. So, which is I'm super pumped.
Yeah, good question, Steve. My 2 cents. I was at AWB for a while as well, and it's like because I couldn't get the CWB yet, and I was applying for a lot of technician jobs, and I wanted some kind of like all right, this guy's thinking about wildlife professionalism even more in depth than maybe the average biology degree technician might be. So I just wanted that, and then immediately when I could get the certified wildlife biologist, I did as well. So. I think for early career it might be a little different, but if you're in a position where you're approaching that CWB criterion, then it's like maybe you could just go right for it. I think there might be, if you did AWB then CWB, there might be an extra cost in there. I forget if you could jump straight to CWB. I think you can, so it might dodge an extra fee there. So that might be a good idea too.
So with that, thank you, Rob. With that, I would love to segue, because we've kind of already been touching on it. What do you feel are barriers to becoming either an AWB or a CWB? We've mentioned the courses that can be required to get the AWB, but I'd love to hear from, whoever wants to speak on that.
I can go first. What I didn't like about the certification process was the forms, and the navigating those was a little confusing. And all right, make your best case for why you think you're smart enough for this one aspect of biology. And it's like, all right, I hope my subjective view of my own classes is good enough. So navigating the forms was a little strange, but otherwise fairly like if there was questions about it, I don't think like the review board would be like, he didn't answer this right, reject. Like it might be a little bit more organic of like, all right, you put it this way, but like, did you get this kind of thing going? I don't think it was meant to be like a serious hurdle. It was just trying to account for every different biology degree you can have out there and trying to fit it into one common structure. But I would say the forums were the most difficult part for me. Otherwise, I had some good help to get those classes in place beforehand. So that wasn't my struggle, at least.
Yeah, I'd say for me is I waited a few years between graduation and when I was actually applying for the AWB. So like you said on the forums is trying to go back and fill in the descriptions of classes and everything after the fact. And yeah, I mean, I could go and search them on the UF website and kind of get descriptions and stuff, but they didn't always sound like they would actually fit into the category. And so it was actually making those descriptions based off of what I remember from the class a few years later that was kind of the more difficult part, which if you're doing it while you're, in school or shortly after, it would definitely make that part a lot easier.
I wonder how easy it is to find those descriptions way after the fact as well, because some classes don't exist anymore, and
Oh, for
it's like I
sure.
forgot
I
what
did
it's
run into
called.
that. So
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with everything that's been said. And I do want to echo, I think the course work has still been a big obstacle and challenge for a lot of folks. So I was in the realm of, I got really lucky. My undergrad was kind of set up that way to fit into certification, but not everyone does. And so I think that is just continuously been an issue. Fortunately, though, I guess I'll also say that the committee and TWS are constantly trying to improve the entire process. And there's already been a lot of big changes that have happened in even the past 5 to 10 years. And so I think, there's always room for improvement with certification. And I appreciate that there's constant interest in how do we make this more accessible to more people. And so I really do appreciate the changes that they've made in those past couple of years. But I do think that still is going to be a big obstacle for a lot of folks.
I like the
And
idea of them making it more accessible, but still focusing on the integrity of the certification and not watering it down at all. I would throw in one point, I think I was digging through a lot of old syllabus because I did it many years afterwards. And so the classes that were no longer offered, I was doing that. And then I think I probably struggled with one particular category that I did not have a really good alignment with coursework, but I was able to kind of explain some experience that I had, and I'll say that I thought I spent a lot of time and I had good reviewers on my application, but I felt like the review panel was very fair in their evaluation and not really expecting unrealistic sort of write-ups, you know.
if I could add one more thing as well, when I was applying for the CWB after being an AWB, I didn't realize you have to know a CWB to vouch for you as well. So that's also a hurdle because it's about who you know and who could vouch for you as well. So that's maybe a hurdle I didn't anticipate going into it. But that's why I wanted to have you here as well, Angie, because you were able to vouch for me. And so it's like, oh yeah, I do know a CWB. My first boss actually. And so after meeting you at different conferences since then as well, it's like, okay, I stayed in contact. Okay, I feel like I can ask her to vouch for me. I hope that's okay. And it was. So thank you, Angie, for that. But start thinking about who you know who might be able to vouch for you and like maintain those relationships as well, because that also might be a part of this process that you'll need to think about in the future.
Grace, I got a question for the other panelists that's directly related to this. And, I've had my certification for so long that I'm exempt from the continuing education requirements. But even if I had to do it, it wouldn't be a problem in what my professional realm is. But the other panelists, do you see that the continuing education requirement could be problematic in retention of the certification?
And I think it's 80 like continuing credits. Is that what it is? Yeah. Yeah, I haven't come up on that yet, so I'm still so fresh. I haven't had to renew yet. I have to renew, I think, in 2029, so I'm safe for a while. But I'm also a member of the Wildlife Society, and all those meetings I go to count for those credits. So there's that. I'm also doing a PhD at the moment too. I hope that counts as credits as continuing education. But yeah, I don't. At least for this next renewal, I don't know if I'll have any problems. But yeah, it is something you have to constantly think about and ask for credits and inquire, does this thing I'm going to give me credits or not? Yeah, I can see that as something in the future. Yeah, does anybody else have more on that though?
I just renewed mine last year, and I didn't really have any issues with getting enough credits. Attending a couple of different conferences every year, using the credits off of those. I think the credits are an important part to show that you're, you know, as the certified wildlife biologist, you're maintaining the education constantly, and the improving techniques and everything that are going on and research out there, new research. So, yeah, I didn't find it to be much of an issue at all.
Uh, and Hunter, how many credits is it per typical conference, like a 2-day conference or something like that?
Oh,
How many
geez.
credits do you get? Yeah.
I don't even know off the top of my head.
Oh, sorry to put you on the spot. Yeah.
Yeah, you're good. I
I'm just
think
wondering, is
it's
it
like,
like, do you feel like it has to be one
15-ish.
conference every single year to meet up with that, or is it like one conference and you got half your credits? Yeah.
Yeah, for the most part, I attend one main big conference every year, and then just a couple, smaller presentations and stuff that might get a couple credits, and that was plenty to get me there. So
Yeah, I
I've
just
re
went. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead, Angie.
I was just going to say, I just went through my renewal as well. And I honestly was most scared about trying to remember everything that I had done in the past 5 years. So, like, I know some people are really good about tracking that and making sure that they're like keeping an ongoing spreadsheet. I did not do such things. However, it was way easier than I thought to be like going back and being like, oh, yeah, I went to this conference, this presentation. They come up pretty quickly, I think, for most people who are staying active in the field. So, yeah, I was nervous about that, but it was a happy surprise. It wasn't as big of a deal as I thought.
Yeah, I've renewed twice since my original, and I think I already have enough credits within the first year or two of my most current sort of renewal, and so I'm not too worried. That'll get me another 5 years. But I think they give you one credit per 3 hours of field work, and then I guess the coursework or the conference is maybe one for one. But Steve, I remember when I around the time I applied, they had it had only been a couple of years since they changed the grandfather clause, and so I had a couple of elder statesmen sign off for me and review mine, and they were fortunate enough, and so that's not the case anymore. But again, similar to the application, they're pretty reasonable and sort of the interpretation of what you've done and how it applies to the career.
Well, I appreciate the elder statesman comments, so thank you.
Yeah, Steve, that's a fun perspective that you have been, I forget what year it was, but you've been grandfathered into not having to renew speaks to your expertise. No, that was a wonderful, that was super enlightening for me. That was really interesting perspectives. We do have a few questions in the chat, so I'm gonna read them out to y'all and see what you think. So the first one is, are there any options to meet the requirements for courses such as Natural Areas Training Academy or other programs for individuals with an undergrad in an unrelated field? Um,
I still say the Natural Areas Training Academy Plant Communities of Florida course. I took that, and I don't know if it's still offered. I took that shortly after moving to Florida, one of the best classes I've ever had, and I couldn't imagine them not recognizing that as something valuable for some form of ecology or botany credits, probably ecology. Um, Again, I think they'd probably be pretty reasonable.
Mm. And for courses like that, Chad, if you know, do they give you like a certification like PDF or something? Because that might be your proof of like, I did take this course for this long, and that might be something you might need to provide the review board for these kind of other courses that aren't like a college course. Yeah. Does that sound right? Yeah.
I've never even had to provide completion certificates. I've made note of when they occurred and the official name and who presented it, and that was typically enough.
Gotcha. Cool.
Yeah, I do know that they redid the website, the wildlife.org. So I do wonder if there would be like additional information on kind of what their flexibility is with different courses and granting, the educational background. Um, But thank you all for your thoughts on that. Our next question is, did any of you have to go back and either take additional courses outside of your biology degree or add additional courses outside of your biology degree if you're working, like if you're working towards an AWB while in college?
Yeah, luckily I did not. I got all of them done while I was still in undergrad, so I'm not good for answering this question. And I also want to mention, if you guys want to come off mute to ask your question as well or clarify, like feel free to do so. Yeah.
Yeah, Gray. So one thing too is it's been like I said over 40 years ago since I did mine, but the thing is, I remember that the coursework, you may have like a fisheries class that 50% of it was statistics and 50% of it was this, or so you can split your coursework. I mean, you could have a 4-credit class and you can use 2 credits to meet this category and 2 to meet that. So you can be innovative in how you do your application. At least you could then, and I think you still can do that.
Yeah, I know that's a lovely perspective. Yeah, so that question was from Jeff. And if again, that was a great reminder, Rob, if you wanted additional clarification or question, please feel free just to speak up.
Hey, can I ask a follow-up real quick for Rob? Hey,
Absolutely.
I'm a professor at Eckerd College, which we're in St. Pete. We're a small private liberal arts college, and so I'm looking to mentor students. We just got our TWS chapter approved at the college level, and then once our students are back this fall, we're going to work with actually getting it approved at the TWS level. So this is my first exposure to this group, but it seems really, really like it could be helpful for our students. And this has been really edifying for myself to just listen to. But as mentoring our students, it sounds like a lot of you are saying that having a good mentor was really key for your AWB or leading to your CWB. Rob, you mentioned that you didn't have to basically take extra courses, but if during your degree, did you have to add, courses? When I said outside of the major, and that might have not counted for the major. I want to make sure as we mentor our students in house here that we don't end up creating, like a loophole where they really have to strongly justify something else is counting for, say, the wildlife management course. Right now, we don't have a strong wildlife management course on the books, but we have a lot of courses that are adjacent. So, like, should I be thinking about, do we develop new courses in our college offering? Or again, like if a typical bio major kind of counts it if they're going within the ecology track.
Yeah. Yeah, great questions. I might not be a great example. I went to the State University of New York College of Environmental Sciences and Forestry, where the 2 biggest majors were conservation biology and wildlife science. And so I took the wildlife science route, which has a lot to do with wildlife professionalism and stuff like that. So there was plenty of great courses. And my capstone was a wildlife management course specifically where you had a local forest and you had to manage for a certain game species. And that was our capstone. So like that fit that criterion pretty well. But you raise a good question. If you took like let's say a generic basic biology degree, how many extra classes on top of what most universities would offer standard would you have to take past that, and where could you find those specific classes? That's a great question. Yeah, I don't know if anybody else has any additional thoughts on that. If that was your question too, Jeff. Hopefully I got everything you're
Yeah,
asking for.
I think you summarized it just right. And we don't have, right now, we don't have a wildlife biology program or a wildlife sciences program. We have environmental studies, we have animal studies, which is not animal science, it's animal studies, which is much more, a sociology trajectory. And then we have biology, and we have an ecology track within that. So just again, looking to think like, how do I start building our student interest in this in a way that's sustainable for what we have, or if it means adding a singular course, if we do have to add a course to the books, it's called wildlife biology and management. That's not a huge task, but if otherwise, it kind of if it's feasible for students to basically plug in with a basic ecology degree outside of maybe one course deficiency.
Yeah, that sounds like a great idea. Yeah. Anybody else have any thoughts on that?
Jeff, I did add to the chat, there's a TWS working group as well for college and university education. And I think that that working group, as well as just professors generally, have communicated a lot with certification board. And that might be helpful to ask that question just because they would have more connection and understanding of what may be the most helpful for them to then see, what kind of courses are you all offering? How could it fit into the certification? And then where are the gaps? And so that would be a potential route as well. But I don't have a great answer for you other than that. Sorry.
Thank you. I'd love to follow up with that working group. That would be really helpful. That sounds like that could be the slam dunk. And I also just want to make another comment to the group here. This has again been really helpful for us too because there is probably an incorrect stereotype. I'm a herpetologist myself on campus that if we were to have a TWS chapter, that it's like all hook and bullet minded. Like we don't have a big deer hunter group, even though I personally deer hunt. Like that's not our interest at Eckerd College. Our interest is probably pretty closely with what many of you all are doing too. So it helps me when I go to our administration and say, hey, we might want to add a course like wildlife management. That again, this panel session has been helpful for making that more clear that we all work in the field of wildlife biology, even if we're not teaching deer and turkey management.
That is wonderful feedback. Jeff, thank you so much for sharing that. And I'm so glad that this is, helping you so much. That was our hope. That was Rob and I's hope when we came up with this. So wonderful, wonderful feedback. Thank you. We do have a few other questions. So I forgot to acknowledge people's names, my bad. So Rochelle, she asked a question earlier. There's another question. Do you know, Angie, I feel like you might have a little bit more knowledge about this. Do you know if TWS is considering offering any other certifications? She says that she works for a nonprofit and they deliver a significant amount of wildlife and conservation education. I'd appreciate any certification for educator or naturalist. I haven't heard of anything with TWS creating another certification. Uh,
Same. I haven't either. I would also say though, like I said, they're always looking to improve and add on. So I mean, if that's something of major interest, again, there's another working group actually with TWS that's focused on education and outreach. They might be really great folks to connect with and see if there's ever been discussions around that. They would have more information on it, but I have not heard of that in the conversations yet, at least.
It's a great idea, though. We should have that.
Actually, Angie, thank you for saying that. I am actually on the working group board for the Conservation Education Outreach Working Group with TWS. We're having a meeting next week, we have not talked about any sort of certifications like that, but Rochelle, you and I can contact or get in touch, and we definitely have things that could be helpful for you. Wow, that was totally slipped my mind. Thank you, Angie. Not plugging my working group. We do have another question from Jessica. She asks if you have an AWB and apply for a CWB, but cannot obtain enough CE credits to renew, do you lose your certification entirely, or can you still keep your AWB certification, considering the recent change where AWB does not expire? That is a good question. I do not know.
Isn't there a limitation to how long you can be an AWB before something needs to happen? So you could potentially go back, but I would think it's still going to be finite.
So I just want to hop in. So there was a recent change where now the AWB doesn't expire. So I'm just trying to weigh the pros and cons of should I pursue a CWB? Should I keep the AWB if it doesn't expire? But I guess I'm just afraid of losing the certification entirely if there comes a point in my career where I can't renew a CWB. And thank you, everyone, for this panel. It's been really helpful.
Yeah, Jessica, that's a good question. I don't have a good answer for you either. I would, again, maybe say reach out to TWS. I think Jennifer Murphy's the main certification TWS staff person. She may be able to help you in understanding, but I would say if it's possible to try, if she agrees that you could go back to AWB and just stay on that if you don't meet those renewal credits. but try to go to CWB and try to hit those renewal credits. It probably is a little bit easier than maybe it comes off. It seems really daunting when they have the whole number, but it is over 5 years and it's fairly easy to get. It's all self-reported. So I think it's a little bit easier than maybe what we make it out to be. So yeah, I would attempt it if you can, but also agreed that you don't want to lose your certification completely if that's the case. So maybe check in with her first to make sure you wouldn't lose it.
And another thing is, even if you did lose it, you know, your renewal stuff just has to come within a 5-year period. And so if there was, a 5-year period in which you did qualify for that, you could reapply and renew it that way. So.
Wonderful. Thank you all for that. I think there. Oh, and thank you to each of the panelists for giving your contact information in the chat as well. That was very helpful. I think there's 2 more questions. Do you know if it's from Rochelle? Do you know if oh, we already answered that. Apologies.
Rochelle did ask another question though.
Oh, here we go.
Is there a protocol for what counts as continuing education credits?
Yeah, I don't mind coming off mute and asking this question because it's a little detail. So I do offer and teach a lot of courses, mostly for the public, but also for our volunteers and some of our staff members. I recently, just last week, became a naturalist ambassador, and we'll be starting to offer more programs than that. So I hold 2 other professional credentials completely unrelated, and normally you have to go through a protocol to say that this course counts towards 1 CEU, or this structure has to be in place in order to say it would count towards the CEU, because I'd love to be able to say that for our programs when relevant to this type of certification, but I wasn't sure if I can submit the course to somebody and say, they agree, and then I can advertise that and invite people who need continuing education.
I'll just add on some of the other comments about the review board being pretty lenient on recertification. So while the initial application is pretty strict and you've got to dive deep, like we talked about in the syllabus and course descriptions, I see your Merritt Island picture on here. For recertification, I've used SISMA webinars, 1-hour SISMA webinars. I've used participation on JWatch surveys, other wildlife surveys, the 3 hours for 1 credit in the field. I think I've used prescribed fires participation. So all of those things have worked out well for me on the recertification.
I also did just add to the chat. So you can also send your agenda to the email that's in the chat, the certification@wildlife.org, and request pre-approval. They'll actually give you the number of CEUs that they would count that for. And usually they're looking at the amount of time and what the content is. And if you had questions about maybe why something wouldn't be included in that, they would certainly help you through that. And you could work through that over future workshops and trainings.
Perfect, Angie. Thank you.
Alrighty, Rob, thank you for snagging that question from the chat. And with that, we just have a few minutes left for our allotted time. So I'm just going to do, a quick thank you. Thank you so much to each of our panelists and everyone for your participation. This was a great discussion. Great questions were asked. The feedback and perspectives were very beneficial and educational. We're super excited to continue our wildlife connections and having conversations like this. And if you have any, questions, comments, future topics, ideas, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. I am going to share. Oh gosh, I gotta see how I can share this. Share. Let's see. Oh, okay. So it's sharing on my end. I was gonna share a slideshow with our contact information. Please bear with me as I have technical difficulties. Oh, there we go. Excellent. Great success. So, with that, I don't know if there are any last minute questions. And I just thank you all so much for your time.
Grace, do you have it just says TBD. Sorry, I just noticed there's not a date for the October one yet.
Yes, we are working through the details on that. They will be coming shortly. We have some ideas. We just got to solidify the guest and the date.
And the in-person drone session it's the 29th and 30th?
Oh,
Yes.
totally.
Yes, our fall workshop is the idea of it is drones. It is October 29th and 30th at the Ocala Youth Camp. It will be on our website soon for registration. It's on there with information, but the registration will be available soon online.
Okay, thanks. I'm the one who sent Joel's information forward as a potential speaker, so I wanted to make sure I had the date, because for some reason I wrote 30th and 31st, and then I noticed it said 29th and 30th, so I just want to make sure I had it right.
And before we hop off, I just wanted to speak to the agency perspective from the Fish and Wildlife Commission, because it does seem like it's getting more emphasis, the certification. We've got this new career development program where, you're here a certain amount of time. There's certain benchmarks that you can meet. And if you meet that certification, that allows you to, get a salary increase after a certain number of years. So it seems like, that's something that they're doing in the last year or two, and it's promising to see that. And I just want to say again, thank you to everyone. It was great to hear all the different perspectives, and appreciate you being here. Thank you.
Thanks for the invite. Appreciate the opportunity.
Yes, thank you, Chad.
Sure. Thank you all for coming.
Thanks.
Great.
See y'all.
Everyone have a wonderful day. Thank you so much.
Thank you.